Brennan, a man who's far more straightforward about these matters and a man who can see the wood for the trees. Former police officer, director of the Law and Order Foundation, also a founder of Knives Destroy Lives. Norman, very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Mike.
Good to see you, man. I mean, it's hard to take, isn't it, that in this week of horror from what's been going on in Southport and what we found out yesterday in terms of the detail of the dreadful crimes committed by this scumbag who I'm not even going to name anymore. I'm not going to show his picture. In the midst of all of that, there's 4 people stabbed in Croydon. There's a young boy of 12 who made the front pages for one day because he was killed as he was walking home from school by a 14-year-old who had previously been involved in some other trouble. I mean, you know, it seems as though now every single day there's a stabbing incident which may or may not end up being fatal, but is so damaging to the fabric of our society.
No, you're absolutely right, Mike. In fact, it was 5 that was stabbed in Croydon yesterday. I get all the Met press releases.
Yeah.
It started off on Christmas Day when there was a quadruple stabbing in Bletchley. 2 women were stabbed to death. 2 men. One was 17 years of age. He was very seriously injured, and they also stabbed a dog. There was so many others as well.
I mean, goodness me.
And then we went on, and in Woolwich, an 18-year-old student stabbed to death outside, certainly stabbed and critically injured, and he died, I understand, in Woolwich. Just up the road, he was a student. Just up the road, a schoolboy on a bus was stabbed to death. The other day in Luton, there was 2 women stabbed. One is dead. In Crawley, a triple stabbing, a man charged with 3 attempted murders. And just only a few days ago, Mike, as you rightly highlight, a 12-year-old boy was stabbed to death in Birmingham. How bad does it have to get for the government actually do anything? And as you rightly highlight, when I was a police officer, I actually broke from the ranks because I was so concerned, something no police officer does. That was 30 years ago.
Yeah. Incredible, isn't it? I mean, I've got another one to add for you. Sandy, who's a regular viewer and contributor to the show, says one in Suffolk for you. A 17-year-old still being questioned about a knife murder of a 63-year-old person on Christmas Day in Ipswich. So, I mean, it's no longer just in the kind of, you know, inner city, urban jungle, if you like. You know, it's happening in places like Ipswich. It's happening in places like Cornwall, you know, in Yorkshire. It's just incredible. But what is it that is causing it, I suppose, the first question? Because I've started to hear people saying, you know, knives don't kill people, people kill people, which is what they used to say in America every time somebody got shot to death. I don't know what it is that the authorities... I mean, I ask the question every time it happens to Sadiq Khan, when are you going to do something to stop this? But what can he do?
Well, it's a big question that nobody is prepared to answer, but there are answers. I mean, the last government, Mike, it took them 8 years to define what a zombie knife was, and that was because of words. 8 years. How many thousands of people were stabbed to death or maimed? How many children killed other children? How many parents planned funerals instead of bright futures? It was thousands. And what has Keir Starmer done and Yvette Cooper? They're now deciding that you need 2 types of identity by buying a knife off of Amazon. This is all froth.
Yeah.
Thing is, nobody's prepared to deal with the substance. And I'll tell you what the substance is, Mike. And I went to number 10 Downing Street and handed a letter into Tony Blair all those years ago, wrote to the Queen and every single MP. And I said, what we need to drastically reduce all these murders and knife crime, 5 years mandatory prison sentences. We need mass stop and search. Yes, some sections of the community are pretty upset about the way that they're targeted. But there again, there's many families, mothers and fathers, that are very upset about their children being murdered and ask the police to do something about it. We need a massive education programme. We need mentors. And we need personal and parental responsibility. And all the government does is deal with the froth. Nobody's prepared to deal with a substance, and so much so that the other day it took me an hour just to post on all the murders and stabbings overnight, and I launched a GoFundMe. I funded everything I've done for 35 years myself. Now, a citizen should not have to set up a GoFundMe to challenge the establishment, and I even posted the other day, Mike, because it's not an attractive subject I look after, which is homicide, gun and knife crime, is that I said if I have to beg to get funding so I can get a formidable small team together, and don't forget, Mike, I don't just talk a good job, I do one. The double jeopardy laws that's in place now so that two of the Lawrence killers could be prosecuted. They were my clients. Yeah. I advised them. You know, people get victim impact statements in courts nowadays, Mike. That was down to my charity. Yeah. We caused that. So I can achieve things. The thing is, the government love people like me that have got no funding because we're not a threat.
Yes, I know. It is absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? But the other thing, I suppose, that we would struggle to answer is why now? Why so much knife crime? You know, we've always had knives. You know, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. You know, we had plenty of kitchen knives in the drawer. You never thought about going out and stabbing anybody. My kids tell me that when they were in high school, which was a couple of years ago now, you know, a lot of children, and this was in Sussex, were bringing knives to school for protection.
You're right. Last year, Mike, it was 160,000 children and young adults carried a knife. Most of them carry them every day. There are 4,000 gangs in Britain, 200 in London. Yeah. Nearly every single one of them are armed with a knife, sometimes a gun, predominantly a knife. Yeah. The cross-border crime, county lines, most of them are armed with a knife. And what happens is that instead of sending out that deterrent message, Mike, that this will not be tolerated, you get 5 years minimum sentence mandatory for carrying a gun, yet you're 3 times more likely to be stabbed to death and shot to death, yet you can get a fine, no equivalent to a parking ticket, for carrying a knife. Yeah. And everybody that carries a knife is a walking time bomb. And we've got to break this circle, and I've tried to break that circle. And what does it say when a member of the public has to set up a GoFundMe to say enough is enough? And I'm Britain's lead law and order campaigner and leading knife campaigner. If people don't listen to me with the solutions that I suggest, and don't forget, I'm not a politician, I'm in bed with nobody, we are going to continue to see the epidemic, which is a national emergency. And as I said to Ian the other day, Mike, if I described knife crime in Britain in medical terms, we're on life support. Are we actually going to nurture that body, or are we going to turn that life support off, where it's the law of the jungle on the streets of London and Britain?
I know, absolutely. Well, listen, Norman, we all appreciate what you're doing, so do keep it up. I know it's debilitating sometimes and really, really frustrating, but we're very grateful for what you do, and so please keep doing it, and we'll keep talking to you and keep getting you on. Norman Brennan, former police officer, director of the Law and Order Foundation and founder of Knives Destroy Lives. Let's talk to Diana. She's got a message.
Hi, Mike. Diana from Shepherd's Bush. I think this is completely laughable. This man committed the most heinous crime against 3 children, and then he sits in court, says he feels sick, and they carry him off. Personally, I'd have chained him to a chair, put a Hannibal Lecter type of mask on his face, and made him look at the parents of those children. What a joke.
Yeah. That's exactly what I would have done. Put a gag on his mouth, put a ball gag in his mouth, or put just a plaster over his lips so he couldn't speak. I don't care. I would have made him sit there. I would have chained him to the thing, tied him to a chair like they do on the plane if you misbehave. This one from Dorothy from a very windy East Kilbride. She says, "Good morning, Mike. You hit the nail on the head when you stated the Southport killer was operating as a terrorist. Keir Starmer's speech with smoke and mirrors. His handling of this case has been deplorable." Chris says, "Morning, Mike. As normal, a great show. How on earth can Starmer go to a party after 3 little girls have been murdered and many others have been injured? Riots on the streets, and he thinks more of a fundraising party." Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And Carrie says, Keir needs to get a dictionary. He is unable to define a woman or a terrorist. I think that's right. He could do with some help. Coming up, Lewis MacLeod joins us. He's got some stuff to say about the new President of the United States of America, the 47th President. He might even be with him as we speak.